Okay, the discussion question is going to be the last week of, or the discussion question and answer night, whatever you want to call it, is going to be the last week of May. So if you have any Bible questions, make sure to put them in the question box before then. And other than that, we'll go ahead and get going on this. Now, last week and this week I mentioned this is the most difficult stuff to talk about with the occult because it's not clearly defined. It's just not open for, well, kind of open for interpretation. It's things that you can't just have somebody tell you the right answer. You have to kind of just like seek the Lord on your own and just kind of get to a place, and God brings different people to different places. So it's very difficult to talk about this stuff. But once we talk about this stuff, we'll be able to get more into the more specifics of the cults and also of occultic activity, because it is a threat. It is something that is very much so really all around us, becoming more and more popular. So we started bringing up the idea of the grayness of the occult last week, and we're going to kind of build on that for this week. So let me just kind of recap what we looked at. We looked at the way that there's kind of a modern-day witch hunt. Yeah, I'm sure you guys will remember this, where people kind of find demons behind every single corner, and everything kind of becomes offensive, and that's not really a workable solution. I also mentioned the way that it's not something that I can just tell you what to believe. It's something you have to kind of just come to your own place. I definitely don't want to come to this study where you walk away thinking such and such is okay or is not okay. I don't want you thinking that. I want you, is it the right thing for me to do this or for me to not do this? And once again, we're not talking about, do morals exist? Is there such a thing as right and wrong? Yes, there is such a thing as right and wrong. But there are some things that are right or wrong for you. For you. And this has caused a lot of contention throughout the years because some people want to go, everybody needs to go this way, and then other people need to say, oh, it's all this way. Like, here's a good example. In the modern church, homosexuality is one of those things. Well, is it okay or is it not okay? That's not okay no matter who you are, right? Like, it's not okay, right? That would be a good example of black and white morality. But then there's other things that it's not that they're wrong. It's just, well, we'll build more on this, but it's more of an issue of where you're at. So let's kind of build on this. Some things aren't wrong or right. They're wrong or right for you. Everybody has their own limit. We all hold ourselves back from full freedom to a certain degree, each of us. Hypothetically, if we walked in all the fullness and freedom that Christ gave us, I think you'd see a lot less pointless guilt-tripping ourselves. However, none of us are going to reach that. Everybody has a certain limit, a certain threshold they can't go past. You know what I mean? This is as comfortable as I'm getting and no further. You know what I mean? There's always going to be, for some of us, that one movie or that one book or that one show or whatever, we just don't feel comfortable with it. And some of them, it's not that they're wrong, it's just that I'm not there and I never will be. You know what I mean? So everybody has their limit, and the person who condemns everything is not a bad person. They mean well. See, what people do, especially younger people, they look at older people who condemn stuff and they say, they're wrong, they're just judgmental. They're not wrong, they're not judgmental, they mean well. They just have different convictions from you. That's it. It's not something the church needs to go to war with each other, younger versus older, you don't need to do that, okay? And also, likewise, someone who has that conviction, you don't have to force everybody else to have your same conviction. You know what I mean? Like, we're not talking about moral absolutes. We're talking about personal convictions. There's some things that I feel convicted about that you don't need to be, right? And I'm not going to preach those things because that's my personal convictions. Personal convictions come through growth in your walk with God. They do not come through somebody else telling you what they should be. You don't have to make others share your convictions. If your conscience bothers you, don't do it. If you're reading a book that is totally fine for you to read, but it's still bothering your conscience, don't read it. If you're playing a video game that's totally fine for you to play, but it's bothering your conscience, don't play it. That's simple. Like, don't put yourself in an awkward position. And then also, if you are kind of more of a naive person, I don't mean that as an insult, but if you're one of those people who believes every single thing that you play and read, and you can't distinguish fact from fiction, you know what I mean? Your brain can't get the idea of something being in a book without the author advocating it, then you probably shouldn't read it. Because there's a lot of things in books that the authors are not advocating, and if you're not able to distinguish that in your own mind, by all means, stay away from it. There's no reason to guilt trip yourself. But I will say, as we head into the discussion for tonight, that there's always this tendency that I see repeated over and over again to come at these topics from a place of fear, right? I mean, just think about the end times. How much as kids, or as a kid, I was kind of conditioned to the idea that Revelations is, a scare tactic. The end times are scary, and everything became a thing about better make sure that you're right with God, because Revelations doesn't really have that in it. It's more of a book of hope and encouragement, but it's been twisted into a thing of, fear. And there's always that tendency with everything to come at it from a place of fear, especially when we're talking about the occult, where, these things are mystical, scary things, so I'm going to come and approach it from a place of fear, because I might mess up, rather than coming to it from a place of love and obedience, right? Love and obedience. That's how we're supposed to approach things. We fear things like a curse. We fear things of the demonic and dangerous things. Well, am I doing it because I'm afraid to do it, afraid not to do it, or am I too loving to do it? So, there's a difference between our motivations. So let's move forward in this and talk about tonight. We're moving on, finishing the discussion with the grays of the occult, with what happens if you sin in ignorance. What happens if you get involved with an occultic thing and don't realize that you're involved with an occultic thing? Is there grace for that? Does God's grace cover your ignorance? Or are you possibly even bringing a curse on your house without even knowing this? I think that there is a longer discussion that has to be had about that, but tonight we're just going to kind of make a shorter version, and it's definitely not as black and white as you are probably thinking in your head. So whenever we're talking about the occult, there's a huge danger that I think each of us faces about becoming kind of an extremist, a fanatic. And the problem with becoming an extremist is it sounds good on the surface. For instance, you read in the Bible and it says to avoid the very appearance of evil. You guys remember this verse? Avoid the appearance of evil. And that sounds like, yes, stay so far away from things that could even possibly be construed as being evil. That's what it's saying, right? No, that's not what it's saying. That's what we've been told that it says. Let's kind of break that apart. If you follow that to its logical extreme, what that means is that you can't ever play video games, watch TV, or really any entertainment. You really even can't even be around people either, because, they're going to lead you down into sin too. This is the very appearance of evil, right? So, you have all these different things, and it becomes rule upon rule upon rule, when the funny thing is, there is only one translation that says it, avoid the very appearance of evil. It's the King James Version. And it doesn't mean what people think that it means. They think that it means if there's something evil, something over here might be kind of closely associated with that, so stay away from this thing too. That's what the Pharisees did. That's not what the Bible says. Rather, it's saying, if you see evil, stay away from the appearance of it, the sight of it. It's a totally different idea. And what happens is this one verse in the King James, which, King James is fun to memorize in, but I think sometimes we get the wrong idea. We get to the kind of this legalistic and fake area of, well, I have to avoid gateway sins. And I have to avoid anything that could be perceived as evil. But the problem with that is basically you're living your Christian life in constant fear of how other people are perceiving your Christian life. That's not a walk with God. That's a walk in constant fear of criticism. See, that's not what the Word says. In fact, it says in every other translation, ESV, NIV, everything else, it says to reject or abstain, depending which translation, from evil in any of its forms, which is a much more accurate translation. We're avoiding evil in any of its forms. Like, well, it's not that bad for me to do this thing. It is bad, though. You see what I mean? Just avoid evil. And the whole idea of that passage is to stay away from sin. That's the whole idea. And can anybody even tell me what the context is of that verse? Or what book it's found? Either or. Context or book of the Bible that it says to avoid the appearance of evil. That's exactly the danger. When we quote scriptures and we make doctrines from scriptures and we have no idea what the book is even talking about. It's from 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, which in chapter 2 told us about how we were not, basically, I don't want to get too much into this, but how we weren't, how we were free in the name of Jesus, basically. And so then we get to chapter 5, and we've forgotten what it said in chapter 2, and we say, avoid the appearance, therefore be skeptical of everything. That's not what it says at all. It says, do not quench the spirit, don't despise words of prophecy, but rather test them, avoid the appearance of evil. Well, that changes the meaning quite a bit. Quite a bit. So don't let your freedom be a stumbling block. Another one that's thrown out there by the extremists. That as a Christian, you should always be concerned about how your freedom is going to cause somebody else to stumble. Yes, but at the same side of that, there's an opposite of that, but some are offended by everything. And Paul is not advocating being offended by everything. He's rather saying there are some people not who are getting their feelings hurt, some people who are being led astray from the gospel. That's what he meant by offense. You are offending them from the gospel, casting them out of the gospel by this. And he's talking about not every single thing that you do. He had very specific things in mind if you read the whole book. There are certain things that they were doing that was causing other people's walk to be unnecessarily hard. That doesn't mean in all things you should always be paranoid about everything because you could always be a stumbling block every single misstep you take. That's not what it's saying at all. And what's happened in the modern, especially Western church entirely, not the rest of the world, it's just the Western problem. There's kind of this whole thing where, let's walk on eggshells around everybody because everybody's offended by everything. How in the world are you going to do anything? How is a church going to be able to accept anything or do anything if we're always living in a place of fear of offending somebody? In fact, 1 Corinthians says, why should their conscience limit your freedom? Which is a very good point. But we tell ourselves, well, I'm being a good Christian. No, we're being a self-righteous Christian when we do that. Being a self-righteous Christian. Here's a great example. We're told by these extremists that are basically modern-day zealots and Pharisees that every time, here's a great example. Don't go to Starbucks to get your coffee because something to do with the Christmas mugs. Don't go to Target to shop because we're having some kind of ban on Target or something, or then there was a Walmart ban, or ban for everything. Let's ban the whole world, evidently. The funny thing is, the same extremists that told us not to shop at Target and Starbucks are the same people who are getting mad about the cancel culture around us, taking off Aunt Jemima from the syrup thing and all those different cancel culture things. Christians were doing cancel culture before the culture did it, but yet we're getting mad at the same people. Does that make sense to you? No, we're not supposed to be living the same way as the world lives. We're supposed to be free. Being divisive isn't being faithful to the Bible. In fact, the Bible tells us to avoid contentious people. People who are always posting things on Facebook, who are always have one foot in conflict's door. Be careful about these kinds of things. All they're doing is stirring stuff up. Okay? I brought up last week the most divisive game of all time, Dungeons and Dragons. What was the other thing I brought up? I don't remember. But things that don't have to be divisive, rather we can just apply a little bit of wisdom to it. Now, obviously there's the pendulum, and this is something we all need to watch out for because some here are probably thinking, well, I'm not an extremist. That person is. Here's the thing. There's a pendulum. The more you focus on the extremist, they're so wrong, I shouldn't be like them, the more you become the extremist. It's a weird thing that happens to all of us. You just got to watch out because here's the thing. If you say, that person's so prideful, and you're focusing on how prideful that person is, you're going to become prideful. It's like a law of the universe. I don't know if that one made it from the apple falling off the tree. I don't know if Isaac Newton even knew about it, but it is out there, okay? It is. So you as a Christian have to grow and discern to perceive what is wrong for you, not what I want to be wrong or right. Is this thing inherently wrong, or is it used for wrong? I'm going to go through a series of topics. Some of them are going to be extremely difficult. And on one of them, I'm going to specifically argue against things that we believe in the church just to play devil's advocate and get us to think. Not because I'm necessarily agreeing with these things. Like I said last week, nothing that I'm talking about are things that I'm necessarily believing or not believing. I just want you to think about it. That's the whole point of this exercise. Think about it. We're going to be coming more and more in contact with the occult, not less and less in contact with it. Is non-Christian music evil? I heard this all growing up. In fact, I heard it growing up that you couldn't even listen to music if it sounded like non-Christian music. So like Petra, for instance, was still of the devil, even though they had really good Christian lyrics, because they sounded like non-Christian music. If things had too strong of a drum beat, you couldn't listen to it because it would conjure demons. Not joking. I heard a pastor say that. Not joking. So is non-Christian music actually evil? Well, let's ask a series of questions that I think are important to ask, that we never make it to this place. We always just get to the stop of, stop one, it's evil, and then the conversation dies. But keep in mind, healthy conversation has to exist in order for the church to grow and mature. There has to be communication. First off, what if a Christian plays a non-Christian song? Is it non-Christian or is it Christian? Oh boy. What makes it non-Christian? What makes a song non-Christian? This is a really good question that I feel like nobody ever answers. What makes it non-Christian? Is it because it's on secular radio? Is it because you don't like the singer? Is it because the words themselves are anti-God? Because if what it takes to be a non-Christian song is just to not hate God, there are very few non-Christian songs. Or is it language? Because I know some Christians who have pretty bad potty mouths too. So where are we drawing the line? Meanwhile, I know some non-Christians who never cuss. I guess it's just the way of it. What if it's instrumental? What if a non-Christian writes an instrumental song? Good point, right? What if a Christian writes a non-Christian song? Can non-Christians sing about good things? Or are they singing whatever they're saying is trash just because they're non-Christian? Doesn't Paul himself quote non-Christians? Important points here. Then there's the issue that some Christian songs are kind of questionable. For instance, Sloppy Wet Kiss. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Sloppy Wet Kiss. That's questionable. When I'm praising Jesus, I don't really want to be thinking about that. You know, I just no, let's not. Let's not do that. What? Oh, sorry. And then, you know, there's other people who wrote songs that they sound good enough, but then they give like Facebook explanations about the songs. Corey Asbury did this a couple times. And the things that he said on the Facebook posts to clarify the songs or, you know, meaning is like, wow, that song was way worse than I thought it was. Thanks for convincing me not to sing your song, Corey. What about Power Rangers? What about the Power Rangers? Well, they're evil, right? Where did they get their power from? It's pretend. It's fake. It's pretend. All right? What about Pokemon? Pocket monsters, there's devils in your pockets. It's made up. It's entirely made up. It's just, it's fake. It's fake. It's pretend. We're pretending here. It's not something that is, that much. And once again, I said this last week, and I want to kind of repeat this again because this is important. If you're uncomfortable with something, don't do it. That's simple. Let's say Jesus comes down and he says, okay, everybody, I just want all of you to know that, what's a good example? That listening to CCR is okay. But if you listen to, Kiss, that's not okay. So CCR good, Kiss bad. Okay, all right, but we can do that. And then Melissa says, okay, but I don't want to listen to CCR though. I don't want to do that. Even though Jesus himself said that it was okay, right? Very simple. If you aren't comfortable, don't do it. Jesus is not going to convict you for abstaining from something that you don't feel comfortable doing. And then also, what if you're on the other side of it where you're totally okay with it? Don't do it around them. If you know somebody else has a problem with it, don't do it around them. Why? Why should I have? Just to avoid the problem. Just avoid it. What's the point of stirring up a problem? What is this saying, don't poop where you eat? Is that what it goes? Is that how it goes? Something like that. It's the same kind of concept. Why stir something up that you don't need to stir up? You know what I mean? And so if somebody else has a problem with something, don't do it around them. Right? Just don't do it around them. If I know, let's say Melissa, if I know Melissa has a problem with the Power Rangers, I'm not going to invite her over to watch the Power Rangers. I'm not going to say, hey, I'm going to watch Power Rangers and say, you want to come over? I'm not going to do that. Because why stir something up for nothing? For nothing. You don't have to be contentious because somebody else is being contentious. That's just being contentious. So then people say, so nothing is dangerous? Yes, things are dangerous, but not everything is black and white, and not especially when we're talking about the occult. So what about, can Christians go to war? I don't know. Are we called to be pacifists? I don't remember that verse, but I mean, I guess it could be there. Is it wrong to watch horror movies? I don't think so, but some people really have strong opinions about this. And I know that when you have too much of certain things in your mind, it does affect the way you think. That goes for anything, music, movies, anything. So I would say maybe be wise about it. But once again, I can't tell you what to think about something. If you don't think it's okay to watch thrillers and suspense movies, don't do it. Problem solved. There are some things that are not allowed in my house, not because I think that it's wrong for everybody in the whole world not to do it, because I'm not okay with it. It's not that I necessarily have a verse. It's just I don't feel good about it. But then there's other things that are very much so wrong, and I definitely won't have it in my house. Netflix had this movie that it put out, basically child porn, where they had a bunch of little girls dressed up and doing things, and I about had a fit with that. I have not allowed Netflix in my house since, because I'm not supporting somebody who does that. That's my conviction. I'm not going to tell all of you guys to do that. I'm going to say follow your conscience on stuff. You don't have to get rid of Netflix because I got rid of Netflix, but that's where I drew the line on something. And that's what I'm talking about. Is ignorance a covering then, where you didn't know it was bad, and you're getting involved with the occult on accident? Where's that land? Well, we're going to look at that, and I don't think this is as easy to answer as it's been made out to be historically in Western Christianity. But I will say there's a verse that kind of vaguely talks about it. It says, "My people died because of ignorance or because of lack of knowledge." And this kind of out of context. The verse is more talking about God's people not knowing the law, but the principle still seems to be there. What about Halloween? Is Halloween evil? If D&D is the most contentious of all games, Halloween is the most contentious of all days. I tell you what, how many Christians I've seen fighting about this kind of stupid stuff, I honestly think sometimes people just need to get a job. Like, you're bored, go get a job. Like, if you're seriously sitting around arguing about every single stupid thing, is there someone for you to love and serve? Then go do that. Go do that. Like, I don't see why it has to be such an issue all the time about everything. Now, obviously, the name itself was created by Christians. The name Halloween, that's a Christian word. You can't say that's evil. What about the day itself? Well, let's ask a couple questions. Does God own all days? Did God create all days? Is God worthy on every single day or no? Does the Bible say, this is the day that the Lord has made? Does it say that? Does evil Samhain, which is the pagan celebration, on the same day as Halloween, make that day evil? Or is it rather how somebody uses a day? What about the practices of Samhain? How do they celebrate? How do the pagans celebrate it? Well, usually with sacrifices and different feasts and different stuff for the dead. Is that what we do on Halloween when we serve the community? No, not at all. In fact, most kids don't even do that. They get dressed up as something that they think is fun, and they go out and get candy. Not really anything there, I don't think. I could be wrong, but I really don't think so. Is getting candy or dressing up evil? No, because if it was, church pageants would be evil. And we could never have kids playing a pageant at church because it's evil to dress up, right? But we're not saying that, I don't think. I hope we're not saying that. So once again, separate your opinions, your convictions, and then moral absolutes. Moral absolutes are not yours. You don't own them. They are. You can't argue against them. They are. Convictions are things that are personal just for you. Personalized gift. Opinions are things that should hopefully change all throughout the course of your life. Is the day itself inherently evil, or is it used for evil by some? Now, it's easy when we look at a topic like this to say, okay, the day is not evil, it's used by evil for some. But we're going to take that same concept and ask about Ouija boards in just a second. Okay, so don't go too far on this. Are your convictions causing immoral behavior and attitudes? I'm convicted by Halloween, therefore I'm going to act ugly to people. You missed it. Are you able to love and serve without agreeing? I tell you what, if we had to agree with every single person that we loved and served, we wouldn't be able to serve the community at all, because we'd have to have a questionnaire every single time somebody came to this church to see if they were worthy of us serving them, to see if we agreed with them. Does that make sense? Hold on, I don't want to validate your belief system, so you need to tell me what you believe before I can let you come in here to use your bathroom. What about idols? Are idols wrong? Well, yeah, but let's ask a little more personal questions. Is it wrong to own an idol? Well, most people are going to say, yes, it's wrong, but then what if we say, can a museum own an idol? Well, then most of us are going to say, well, yeah, I guess they can. So there's a little bit of an issue there. Is the thing is made out of wood. Wood is not evil, but then it's dedicated for a purpose, which is evil, but then it's forgotten from that purpose, so is it still evil? What gives meaning? What gives meaning to a thing? You know, let's say this is my room. This big giant room is my. Just go with me on this. If I'm not in the room, is it still my room? What gave this room meaning? Right? If I die, is it still my room? What gives the thing meaning? And this is obviously a philosophical problem, but I think it still applies to this. Does it become evil, or is it the worship of the idol that is evil? Because if you think about it, Star Wars action figures are kind of like little idols. Are you seriously going to say you can't do that? So it becomes a lot less black and white when you stop and think about it. And once again, I'm not trying to make up your mind for you. These are things just to get you to think. When something is used for evil, does it become haunted or cursed? Christians are super divided about this. Can something become haunted or cursed? Keeping in mind that there's really no biblical evidence for something becoming haunted. Can you still believe that something is haunted? Good question. I'm not answering that for you. So let's go on to something even more difficult, Ouija boards. Now, when I first say Ouija boards, everybody's already on the same page. I don't have to convince you that they're wrong, right? I don't have to hopefully I shouldn't have to give you this long exposition as to why Ouija boards are wrong. But I'm going to try to argue that they're not wrong for the sole reason that everybody already believes that they're wrong. Okay? Just like this is just an exercise, okay? Don't get mad at me, okay? Are Ouija boards really wrong? Well, if they are wrong, why are they wrong? What is it about them that makes them wrong? I've heard this said, what if my kids have used it repeatedly and they've never had an issue with it? Fair enough. I've also heard a lot of people arguing and saying, what if we aren't trying to contact a spirit? What if we're just playing with a board? Fair enough. And I will also be the first to say that not every single time that a Ouija board is used is the demonic contacted. Not every single time that a Ouija board is opened is there going to be spirit activity. Not every single seance is going to have spirit activity. Did you guys know that? There are hidden misses when it comes to occultic activities. Sometimes they do the thing, and it works, and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you could say the spirits are unwilling, right? If you can do different hauntings where the people go and try to find the ghosts, not every single time that they go to a haunted house is there actually activity. Some don't know whether it's right or wrong. Is it then okay because they're doing it out of ignorance? And I've heard Christians say this. Okay, so this is not, I'm just pulling this out of my hat. I've heard Christians say Ouija boards are okay if you didn't realize that it was wrong for you to use it. Okay, all right. Some don't believe in the demonic. Some don't believe that there are really ghosts or demons or anything like that. No supernatural whatsoever. So is that okay? Or is it your belief that makes it not okay? No. This is, once again, try to think about this. This is something that's meant, it's a thinking exercise that's meant to challenge your beliefs. That's it. They are often used to contact ghosts, demons, whatever. But if you read the instructions from Hasbro, they actually say nothing in the official Hasbro rules about spirits. It just tells you how to set it up and tells you how to use it. And in fact, the official justification for the game, in case you didn't know this, is that it isn't ever really a spirit moving it. It's rather people using their, they're just, basically you're having micro twitches in your finger that's moving, especially with people who are more susceptible to it. That's the official, the thing for it. But the issue becomes a little more complicated than that, because on the rules it also says, it's just a game, or is it? Which kind of leaves it open-ended. And then we have to ask more direct questions. Was it created for evil, or was it used for evil? Were Ouija boards created for evil, or are they used for evil? Because, once again, it's easy to say so-and-so is evil. It's harder to say why is it evil. Now, I found a lot of times I'm talking to Christians, even when we're talking about things that everybody knows is evil, when you stop and ask, why is that evil? They can't give an answer. That's not good. If we're going to be in more and more contact with people who are involved with the occult, and all we can say is, well, it's evil. That requires no thought, no knowledge of Scripture, no Christian maturity. That's not good. People aren't going to listen to you when you don't know what you're talking about. Now, the Ouija board was originally made by a spiritist. Well, that's a negative mark. But it was made as a parlor game. Okay, here's a positive mark, harmless fun. But then it was largely used by spiritists. Oh, another negative mark. You're told, spiritists will tell you that when you use it, make sure to say goodbye when you're done so that you don't anger the spirit. You want to make sure to cleanse it from the board so that they can go back to their place and that they won't get mad at you and have their wrath on you. That's not good. That's probably on the negative side there. Spiritists also burn sage on it to cleanse it from the negative energy. That's probably a bad thing too. This doesn't sound great. Definitely wouldn't want that in my living room. So then you get to, what does Hollywood say? Well, Hollywood thinks it's another fun thing to scare people with. They made a movie a couple years ago, the Ouija board movie. Christian culture sometimes, like I said, goes to the other extreme and just calls everything evil, even if it isn't evil. So is it actually evil? Well, this is a little bit harder than you'd think to justify why it is evil. Is a board with letters on it evil? No. Do some people manipulate the board with their fingers when it's not really spirit moving it? Yes. But do the exceptions make the rule? Can an object used for the occult become haunted? Another good question. I don't know. If I have two Ouija boards and one was used at a seance and one was not, is it more haunted to use than the other one? You know what I mean? Is it the things, hypothetically, if the Ouija board was simply a parlor game that some people just took way too far for seance, does that mean the Ouija board isn't actually evil? It's rather just how you use it that's evil? See, these are some hard things that I hope cause us to think a little bit about why things are evil, not just because they are. Do I think the Ouija board is inherently evil? I feel that it is. I can't really point to one thing to prove that, though. If you ask me, why is the Ouija board evil? Knowing that it was created as a parlor game, I don't know. I can't tell you because it was created for evil, because it wasn't created for evil. It was used for evil. But a lot of things that were good were used for evil. Like sex. So, where do you go with that? I don't know. I feel in my heart that it's evil. I just can't really point to one specific thing and say that's why. Well, yeah, but then you would have to discredit basically the Bible because people made the Bible. God inspired it, absolutely, but people did write it and put it together, so then the Bible would be evil too. See what I mean? A lot of times we just kind of dismiss a conversation, which I think is hamstringing us because, once again, people in the culture are becoming more involved with the cult, more involved in occultic practices. If we don't stop and think about it and engage in a conversation, there's no way we're going to be able to witness to people because we're going to show our ignorance. Before, we could simply say the Bible says and start there. We can't do that anymore. They don't care about the Bible. We have to lead them to the Bible, which means we have to start on something they're familiar with. You know what I mean? It's a lot harder now. It's harder now to convince people that premarital sex is wrong. You don't know how many times I have to have this argument. Well, you probably should. Why? We love each other. It's like, it's harder now to talk about the simplest of things. I know that it's commonly used in the modern age for evil, but then obviously the person who believes in it's going to say, so it's only evil during your time, so it's not really an absolute evil. And I don't really have an answer for that. Markings on the body were once considered, were used for a lot differently than tattoos are now, but that caused some people to say that tattoos are evil. But tattoos aren't evil anymore in the church, so did they become not evil, or are they still evil and we're just living in sin? Like, where are we going with this? And sometimes we form opinions without a reason, and I'm concerned for the future of the church because it seems like we're being contentious about stuff because we have been contentious about stuff that didn't matter. So then the stuff that actually does matter, we don't really have much of a footing with people except for people who already agree with us, which, isn't the best of things. I mean, if you ask any parent, they're going to tell you that with their first kid, they had a bunch of stupid rules. Then when they got older, they really regretted having so many different rules. I know just in the short time that I've had my own kids, which I've already mentioned, Mike is not the first kid I raised, but he's the first one that was mine that I raised. And with him, I had way more rules than I have for the younger ones. And I a lot of times will regret it, thinking, wow, I really messed up there. So let's give some clarity on this. Context decides meaning. So I don't know if the Ouija board is inherently evil, but I do know that it's used for evil. I do know that. The context in America is evil. It's nothing good there. Is the thing evil, or is it how it's used that makes it evil? I don't know. But I don't really think that I need to know, because I'm not really hungry for a good parlor game. I'm not really like, oh, I need a good parlor game. I'm good. I got other ways to entertain guests. I'm fine. But the thing is, this is the same problem. Literally, if you change out the wording Ouija board with gun, the conversation becomes a lot more one-sided. Are guns bad, or is it the people who use them that are bad? Well, most of us, we're in New Mexico, so most of us, I'm thinking, are probably going to say it's how you use it that makes it bad. I mean, there might be that one person who's saying, but if we switch the word gun with the Ouija board, well, now we can't use the same argument anymore. It's just kind of inconsistency in our thing, which is fine, just if we can explain why we believe that and why there's inconsistency. Inconsistencies aren't always bad. Is studying the stars bad? You hear this from a lot of different people. Okay. You hear this from a lot of different people about studying the stars being bad. Well, let's kind of give context to this. The Magi came to Jesus by studying the stars. And many Christians see end-time signs from the blood moons. Do you remember John Hagee wrote a whole book about the 4 blood moons? Isn't that studying the stars? But yet that's okay, but it's wrong for people to read their horoscope? I kind of categorize them as the same general area. I don't know, maybe I'm off on that, but it seems not too far off. Scientists study the sky, and they don't really do it for one reason or another. They just do. I don't know what all these things. It's very difficult, and I think that's the reason. But I think we need to get away from that's wrong to instead, I believe this because of this. There's a clear reason. I've thought this out. If I have a conversation with a non-believer, we can have a conversation that will lead them to Christ. Rather than I'm just going to share my opinion about stuff because it's my opinion. Because that's all that they're hearing. They're hearing Ouija boards are evil. That's just like your opinion, man. Conversation has ended. Well, but Jesus, that's like your opinion, just like the other thing you were saying. So I will give a couple pointers that I think are important to keep in mind. Evil is evil regardless of what you believe. Regardless of whether you recognize it, evil is still evil. We just have to be able to determine what is evil and what is ambiguous. You know what I mean? Because there's a lot of ambiguous gray areas in life. What is my purpose in doing that thing? Let's say, for instance, I argue that Christians can have Ouija boards. It's not going to bring demonic things into their house. Okay, let's just say I believe that. Once again, I'm not saying that. We're using that as an argument. What is my purpose in having a Ouija board? What have I gained in having one? Third little pointer, if you play with the devil, he does play back. That's just a fact of the spiritual. The closer you are to, sticking your finger where it doesn't go, it's probably going to get bit one of these times. So there is a risk. But if you don't watch out, you're going to end up in the exact same place as the water boy's mom, where everything is of the devil, Bobby Boucher. And you don't want to do that. You want to have good reasons for why you believe or don't believe the different things. The fourth little pointer here is if you have to err on the side of caution. I brought this up last week. Let's say, for instance, you want to read a fantasy book, but you're just like, I don't know about this. So don't decide until you do know about it. Nothing's going to be lost in you spending a couple weeks praying about it. It's not like you're going to, I waited 2 weeks to read that book, so now the whole world is ending. No, just err on the side of caution. Wait. Whether you're trying to contact a spirit or not, why take a chance with something like a Ouija board? And then the last little pointer there, when in doubt, stay out. Study, pray, but just if you're having doubts about whether you should do this thing or not, don't do it. Problem solved. You don't have to give an explanation to somebody else why you didn't feel comfortable doing it. Just, I didn't feel comfortable doing that. Why? I just didn't. I don't know yet, but I'll continue thinking about it. I'll continue studying it, and we'll see where I land on it. And your opinion might never change on that, or conviction. Or if it's a moral absolute, hopefully your morals won't ever change. But we can draw a couple conclusions to ask the question that we asked at the beginning. To answer the question that we asked at the beginning, is ignorance a covering for the things that you do? Can you just plead, I didn't know? Okay. There are 5 things that I'm going to say. Number 1, your intention, what is your motivation? I'm sorry, I skipped slides there. What is your motivation? If your motivation is bad, it's bad to do. For instance, and I've said this, used this as an example since I got here. Is it wrong to wear a hat in the church? No, not at all. Is it wrong to wear a hat in the church if you're doing it just to irritate somebody? Yeah. What is your motivation? That's the first thing. What's your motivation? Okay? James 4:17 says this, which once again is out of context, but the principle is still there. To him who knows to do good and does not do it, to him it is sin. If you knew something and you're like, I'm not going to do that, that's sin. Second little conclusion we can draw from this, has the Holy Spirit convicted you? Not answering for everybody else, you answering for you. Okay? When I talk to Christians and they tell me that they play D&D, okay. When I talk to Christians and they say they don't like D&D, I say, okay, good. I'm not going to tear down your convictions. In fact, I see usually it's the opposite. Usually people don't have convictions. So if somebody has a conviction one way or another, I'm much more supportive of that than if somebody hasn't even thought about it. I was listening to a Christian comedian one time say that he was talking to an atheist friend, he was an atheist, he was talking to a Christian friend, and his friend said, such and such about the Bible, and he said, well, I don't believe in the Bible, it's just a stupid book. He said, oh, what did you read in the Bible that makes you think that there's contradictions in it? And he says, well, I don't know, I've never read it, I'm not a Christian. He says, oh, you're not an atheist, you're an idiot. And he says, what? And he says, what do you mean by that? And he says, it's too complicated to explain to you, you're not smart enough. But I'll just skip that and say this, which this is not how you witness to people. It worked on this one time for this one situation. Don't really witness people like this. And then he explained the philosophical repercussions of what he was saying, but then he went on to say, look, an atheist is someone who has studied and studied and studied, and they have come to the conclusion after much study that there is no God. You shortchanged the whole process and just came to a conclusion. You're an idiot. And he started thinking about it. It bothered him because he thought, well, that's true. So has God convicted you personally? Do you have a conviction about something? If God said no to you, it doesn't matter what others do or what others say, it's no. They can do it, and they can even be justified with God, but if God told you no, it's no. In my house, there's no alcohol. I believe that Christians can drink. In my house, there's no alcohol. I have a conviction of that. That's not changing. People aren't going to bring alcohol in my... In fact, one time, somebody wanted to come spend the night at my house, and I said, you cannot drink while you're staying in my house, and you cannot bring any alcohol into my house. And they got really, really mad at me, and I said, I'm sorry you got mad. You still can't come in my house with that. This is my conviction for my house. You have your house, your rules apply there. This is my rule for my house. Has God convicted you? If so, by all means, live those convictions. But once again, don't expect for everybody else to live your convictions. Some things are good, some things are bad, some things are neutral. That's just how it is. But some things are very much so personal to you. God tells you no, and that's just how it is. And here's the thing that really is going to grind your gears. God and other people, the answer for them might be yes. God can do it, other people can do it, you can't do it. Well, that's not fair, life isn't fair. When God gives you a conviction, you live by the conviction God gave you. No compromise. Paul thought that he was supposed to go to Rome, but not every Christian was supposed to go to Rome. And they ended up dying there. The Rechabites, they abstained because of an oath that their great-great-great-grandfather made. We're not all called to do the same thing. Nazarites were people in the Jewish law who were called to make a specific oath, but not everybody followed a Nazarite vow. And what about Paul saying that it's better to be single if you can? Not everybody is made to be single. I get very whiny when I'm in an empty house. I'm not a very good single person, But some people don't like other people in their house. They want to be left alone. They love being a bachelor or bachelorette. Good for them. Paul said it's better if you can. Not everybody's called to the same thing. Not everything is a moral absolute, even if it's a really big conviction for you. 1 Corinthians, I talked about this, told about how my freedom isn't judged by another person's conscience. You don't have to make people agree with you. Rather, trust that God is leading them. This is an area of maturity in your life that you need. You need to be able to say, God is convicting me of this. He's not convicting them of this. He's leading them. if they're a Christian, he's leading them to their own path of growth, and this is where he's led me to my path of growth. This applies to things that, once again, things that we brought up last week and today too. What if I come to the conclusion that Halloween, I cannot go out on Halloween? Okay, I have to live by that. You don't. What if I think it's okay to play D&D? Okay, I can play it. You might not be able to. Because the Holy Spirit guides in conviction. You have to be able to say, that's the Holy Spirit's battle, not mine. And see, pastors have made this worse on people because they've said things throughout the years that have gotten in people's conscience. For instance, if people haven't changed, I haven't done my job. What? No, I preach. The Holy Spirit does that thing. I don't do that. I don't change people's hearts. The Holy Spirit does. It's not my job to change people's hearts. When I was a worship pastor, the same thing happened. Oh, you're really bringing in the Spirit of God. That's not my job. My job isn't to usher in God's presence. My job is to lead people in worship, and then the Holy Spirit shows up. He does his thing. Those are two different jobs, two different people. See what I mean? God guides some for certain things. You have to trust that God is leading them on their own journey. Give it time. 1 John says that there's a sin that leads to death, and then a sin that does not lead to death. And he says that the one you should pray about and the other one you shouldn't. Sometimes there's things that you have to just give time. Because A, you are right and they shouldn't do it. B, you are wrong and they can do it. Or C, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Okay? So just keep these things in mind. Alternately, don't ridicule another person's convictions. Either way, if God's given somebody else to be free from that conviction of that, good for them. If you're seeing somebody else who has a problem with some of the things that you're doing, don't tear them down and make fun of them. Support them. Good for them. They have convictions. That's great. And sometimes it's going to feel stupid to you because it's not your conviction. But it doesn't have to make sense to you. If you see somebody else living in their conviction and they're actually submitting to God's will in that, good for them. I don't have to agree with the conviction. That's none of my business. But still, I can support them, you know. And here's just another little thing I want to add. You know, people who are struggling the most to not judge themselves are going to be the biggest people who judge you. Remember this. So the people that you can't stand, that they're just like really grinding your gears because they're just so judgy all the time, chances are they live with their own demons. Really, cut them a break. Like, you have no idea what the things that they're going through. There was a woman that I'm telling you this story mostly to keep things on the lighter end. There was a woman that was a very bad attitude, but she was on my worship team, Joy of All Joys. And boy, was she a real pleasure to work with. That's sarcasm. She was not a pleasure to work with. And you know, I was making the passing comment that you can tell it's not so hard what some of these people do to read people's mouths. You can kind of just get a good idea of somebody just from paying attention and listening. And she said, no, you can't do that. And I said, you know, it's not that hard. There's nothing super spiritual about it, really. And she said, well, you can't do it to me. And I said, well, I didn't say that I could do it, but I'll try. And so I said a couple of things, one of which you obviously have had a problem with an authority figure. It's probably your father. Probably something happened when you were a kid. And I said a couple other things. I said, did I hit anywhere near the mark? No. Well, it came out that I was exactly on the head. It's just really easy to see somebody who struggles if you just pay attention and listen. You know what I mean? That's not being a spiritually mature person. It's just being an observant person. You know what I mean? And so when we're talking about convictions, if you can master the art of closing your mouth for long enough to pay attention to the person, there's a lot of things you can learn before you witness a person. But the problem is, I think sometimes we kind of jump out the gate too quickly. Instead of listening to the person, we just kind of, you need Jesus. Why do I need Jesus? I'm fine. You say, I mean, well, I don't know why you need Jesus. I didn't even bother to listen to what you were saying. See what I mean? So next conclusion that we can form, the intention 100% matters. And this is something that's very difficult because it's not easy to explain. Okay, so I'm going to say it, and you just kind of try to understand what I'm saying. Demons take what you give them. Okay, let me say that like this. Beliefs somehow change things. Okay, if you believe something, that alters how it's going to play out. For instance, let's say I watched the horror movie The Exorcist, and I do not believe that this is how it works, and I'm combating it with Scripture. It doesn't bother me at all. I go to sleep and sleep perfectly fine. I wake up the next morning and live my life. Then there's going to be somebody else who watches The Exorcist, and it greatly convicts them. They feel really bad for watching it, maybe. And then the whole time they're having nightmares and all these different things. And for weeks after, they feel like there's a demon living in their house. Both things are fully possible. Why? This is not the only aspect of this. However, one aspect of this is that your intention very much so matters. Your belief matters. People can go into a haunted house who believe in ghosts, and they're seeing ghosts, they're hearing ghosts, they're catching proof of ghosts because they already have their mind made up that the ghosts are real, right? Then you can have somebody else who's a skeptic go and be like, that's completely explainable. Everything that I saw and heard tonight was completely explainable. It's all fake. In fact, we're going to watch a couple ghost movies in a couple weeks when we're talking about ghosts and whether there is such a thing about ghosts, and point out that it's not really what it seems, which we'll get there later. Very excited for some of the things that we have coming up. But anyways, some people look for ghosts and they find them because they're looking for them. Some people believe that they're worshiping other gods, not demons, so they feel peace from worshiping the other gods because they don't believe that they're worshiping demons. Obviously, we know better than that, but still. Some people smoke and see absolutely no problem, whereas other people smoke and they go to pieces. Why? Because intention matters. Intention matters. The fifth and final, I guess I'm on point number 4, huh? Yeah, I'm on 4. Sorry. The fourth conclusion we can make is that it isn't necessarily about maturity, and this is extremely important. If you don't remember anything from this week or last week, remember this. It's not necessarily a maturity issue. Some people should abstain from things for basically 4 reasons. Number 1, because of personal experience. Well, I used to be a Wiccan, and so I have a hard time every year on Halloween going out. It triggers me. Okay, their experience. Good. Alcohol, I've told you guys this, alcohol runs in my family. I have a problem with alcohol in my house because of that. My personal experience. Second thing, their understanding is different from your understanding. Well, I think, because of just my own reasoning, I think that fantasy is evil. Third thing, their intentions. Well, I'll show them I'm going to do this, play this video game or whatever, just because they said I shouldn't. Just because they said, no, I'll do it. That's just being stupid. And the fourth thing, their context, the world that they live in. For instance, a Christian in Africa would die before eating a snake. Here, it's just like, who cares? Christians in Africa have a lot harder of a time believing that Christians can get tattoos. Why? Because of some of the tribal things that happen there. We don't have those things here. So those 4 things: experience, understanding, intentions, context. Ultimately, it's not really your business where somebody else's convictions lie, but I just want you to understand that just because somebody else has a conviction that you think is stupid, that doesn't mean that they're less or more mature. See what I mean? It doesn't mean that they're less or more mature. I can believe, I brought up some other examples. Let's see, what were they? I can believe that Halloween is evil and sinful and not be any less mature than you. You can believe that Dungeons and Dragons is totally fine and not be any less mature than me. See how that works? Okay, it's not necessarily an issue of maturity. Now, if Christians are involved with stupid things like Ouija boards, I would strongly say that, yeah, that is a maturity issue. That definitely is a maturity issue. But moving on, if your brother is sinning, absolutely go to them, but is it really a sin? And it bothers me that when I talk to people about this, they say this, well, I think it's a sin. I didn't ask what you thought. I said, is it a sin? Obviously, you have an opinion. Everybody has an opinion, okay? That's fine to have an opinion. However, that doesn't mean that it's right just because it's your opinion. That really needs to be something that we're able to handle. If we cannot handle the possibility that we might be wrong, well, that's not a good place to be in. And then the fifth and final conclusion I think we can draw from this is ignorance a covering? Yes and no. I wrote them all out there for you guys. Abstain from because of experience, understanding, and attention context. Anyways, the fifth and final conclusion we can draw here: ignorance is and is not a covering at the same time. Sin is always a sin, no matter how you see it. But God deals differently with sin when it's high-handed versus when it's accidental. For instance, the law talks about that. Romans 2 talks about this. Well, can't you get demon-possessed on accident? So I was messing with the Ouija board and I got demon-possessed. Well, no. no, that can't happen. First off, Christians can't get demon-possessed. That's the first thing. Easy peasy there. I would say you can welcome more problems into your life than there needs to be, and sometimes even have demonic oppression, depending. Now, I want to be careful when I say demonic oppression, because when people hear that, they start talking about generational curses in a way that's not biblical, and different things that gets a little bit out of hand. And we'll come back to that some other time, but not now. And so I want to kind of clarify that I'm saying that in a kind of a not as much as people are saying. This is why I'm saying that, okay? Because it's very common in the church for everything to be blamed on a demon. I mean, everything. I've said this for a couple Sundays and a couple Wednesdays both. Everything gets blamed on demons. I mean, hey, if your tire broke or popped, it's a demon. If you're having a fight with your spouse, it's a demon. If you're having poor health, it's a demon. I mean, you just have to cast out these demons of this and that and the other thing. And no, that's not what I'm talking about at all. That's a conversation for another day, but that's not it. Christians can't get possessed. Non-Christians can accidentally get possessed. Yes, that can happen. Absolutely, that can happen. They are not free, and they are not safe. A side point, though, not every sickness is caused by... I once heard somebody say that I don't believe in the Bible because it says that sickness is caused by demons. It doesn't say that. Some sicknesses are caused by demons. Not every sickness is caused by a demon. There's a total world of difference there. Not every single time did Jesus heal somebody did it say that he casted out a demon. Anyways, can you be doing something opening the door for the demonic and not feel convicted about it? This is a question I hear from Christians a lot. Can you be doing something? And it is opening a door of oppression, of demonic activity in your house, and you don't even feel convicted about it. Is that possible? Yes and no. Let me kind of clarify. Yes, in the sense that if you have hardness of heart as a Christian, you start letting sin into your life and you start messing with stuff, and over the course of time, yes. However, I would say this, and we talked about the will of God in prayer last Sunday, and I would kind of build on that. If your life is really, truly submitted to Christ, no. You cannot accidentally have something into your house that is demonic and not feel conviction for it. No. I do not believe that that is true. I do not believe that you have to live on the edge at all times of, oh no, am I allowing something demonic or not? Because if you're submitted to Christ, Christ rules the household. He'll tell you. He'll convict you. He will. So I really don't feel like we have to live in that place of constant fear. And that's why I brought up at the very beginning that sometimes Christians approach these topics from a standpoint of fear. That's a few more things before we wrap up. Maya Angelou once said, do the best you know until you know better, then do better. I would say this exact same thing is true when we're talking about stuff like this. Do what you know is right. And if it turns out later that you were wrong about something, okay, we'll cross the bridge when you come to it. But don't live in such constant fear. I tell you, even if you do your best, you're still going to stumble over stuff. They told us, eat healthy, cut out sugars. Okay. So we went to sugar-free stuff. And then they told us, well, erythritol is actually causing all these medical problems. Oh, so don't eat sugar-free. Just either a little bit of sugar or no sugar at all. Or, I don't know, maybe that'll change too, so stay tuned. And then we were like, well, okay, all right, that's fine. So can it still hurt us even though we didn't know? Yes. They told us seed oils are fine, canola oil is fine. And we okay, all right, so we cooked with them, and they said, oh, just kidding, it's an inflammatory. Oh, okay. Well, I guess we'll have to change that too. And then they tried posting another thing the other day, and I rebuked it. And by rebuke it, I mean I just ignored it and scrolled past it. It's all, avocado oil not as healthy as, I'm just like, scroll. I'm gone. Leaving it gone. I don't care anymore. I don't care. And then the FDA sold us on this thing about, how a plate should look, how this much grain, this much proteins, this much. And then they found out, well, that's not actually true. They just kind of made that up, and it's not based on any research whatsoever. Oh, thanks for telling us that. Appreciate it. So that thing that I've been trying religiously to follow, that was just made up. Got it. Awesome. Just like the whole little 6-foot thing during COVID. Completely made up. No science behind it at all. Thanks. Awesome. Thank you for making me completely inconvenience myself for the greater good for no reason at all. That's awesome. Thank you. So there's the rule. The rule is there are consequences for your actions. And whether you realize that you're doing something wrong or not, there's still going to be some kind of a consequence. Even when you do the right thing, there's consequences for your actions. Consequences always follows. But then there's an exception to the rule, and that's that Jesus can intervene. And sometimes he does. However, that's not a promise that he always will. I'm going to eat whatever I want, and God will just intervene and keep me alive because I prayed before I ate. Lord, that you would bless this and make it nutritious. I guess he's changing the structure of the food in your mouth before it hits your stomach, I guess. And no. The rule is that there are consequences for actions. That's the rule. But I will say, obviously, God deals differently and offers protection in some situations. So how can we end all this? There's a lot of stuff that we talked about. And like I say, this is the last of the real difficult ones, and I wanted to make them 2 really long lessons, so that way we could just blow through the rest of the stuff and go back to having discussions, go back to having more practical things like specific cults and that kind of stuff. But I wanted to hit this first. It's really important stuff that we do this, because a lot of times people believe things, but they never get to the why of why they believe it, which makes a shallow, hollow, legalistic Christianity, because you're doing all these things and you have no idea why. Every church, every 10 or so years, should look at the things that they do and say, is there a reason for this? Sometimes we do the same things in perpetuity when we only did that. Like, here's a great example. Well, we have kids, so we need to make sure to have this door open so that way when the kids come. Well, then you stop having kids and people still keep having that door open. Why? Well, we did that because we used to have kids, but you don't have kids. Well, yeah, but we used to. So you're doing the same thing that you don't need to do anymore because you always have done it. See what I mean? Sometimes there just has to be a conversation where you say, what are we doing here, guys? Here's a few things just to really stir your goat about seeking God and weighing it. Should women be in leadership? If not, and no leadership, or just not in top tier? Why? Should politics be allowed from the pulpit? If so, how much and why? What topics? Are spiritual gifts still for the church today? If so, which ones? Or is it available to everybody, or are there rules there? Do you have to abstain from sinners, or are you supposed to just talk to everybody? Do you become friends with people to be a witness to them, or rather just to be a light? Basically, are you doing it just so you can share the gospel, or are you doing it to be a light in their life? Is it okay to have a negative, judgy attitude and then expect other people to not do the same? Is it okay to be hypocritical of excusing your own personal sin while despising transgenders? Is it okay to make a church low priority but then tell people how you love Jesus? Is it okay to seek an experience instead of truth during worship when the culture is the same thing? They seek truth and they seek experience, not truth, and we get mad at them for it. But then in the church sometimes we chase experience after experience, go to conference after conference, trying anything to rile up our emotions instead of trying to find truth. Is it okay for us to do culture strikes and then get mad when the world is the same? Is it okay for us to hold a sinful nation up to the standard that Christians aren't even living up to? You don't know how many times You don't know how many times I see 2 Chronicles 7:14 brought up to talk about how America needs to repent and turn to God, when it says at the very beginning of that verse, my people, not if a nation that they are living in, if my people were called by my name. Yet everybody wants to rip that out of context and throw it at the world. You transgenders, if you would just change, and the whole problem would be resolved. Oh, well, that's great, but he's actually talking to his people, not to all the sinners in the world. It's expected that there be sinners in the world. In fact, when Paul was talking to the church in Corinth, he actually says it like it's a normal activity for there to be gays in the community. He says, all these people, the homosexuals and all of them, you were that same thing. Now you aren't because you've been freed by Christ, but that's normal in the culture. Those kinds of things are normal. God never expected for us to live out of the world. He expected for us to live in the world. And a lot of times we reach these kinds of things, and there's just these inconsistencies that are scattered throughout our thinking, and we don't even know why we don't believe the same thing all across the board. But then we go to a conversation like the occult, and I can't even teach from the occult without having this conversation first, because people already have their mind made up. There's going to be some occult things I talk about with the occult. You're going to already know what you believe before I even say anything. That's why we had this conversation first. You have to learn how to question yourself, how to allow yourself to be wrong. It's okay. You won't die, I promise you. If you're wrong about something, it's all right. Really, it is. You can believe something for years, and then, maybe I was wrong. It's okay. It's not going to kill you. So then we're going to end with this. Okay, try not to lean on ignorance well, what if the demonic... try not to just, I plead the fifth. I don't know what I'm doing. Try not to lean on ignorance. But know that everybody does something that they shouldn't eventually. Eventually, okay? You're probably more than likely right now in your life doing something you shouldn't be doing. All right? Just kind of come to grips with that. You're not perfect. Did you know that? It's all right. It's all right. I know, especially in years in the church, we've been told that we have to be perfect all the time. You don't. It's all right. It's okay. It's okay if you don't wear a tie. It's okay if your shoes are scuffed up. It's all right. So the summary here of everything we looked at, discussion of the occult has to be tempered with humility, not arrogance. Anytime you're wanting to talk about something demonic, do not meet it with pride at the door. Meet it with humility. Humility is of Christ. Pride is of Satan. If you go to something already knowing something, Satan's going to be able to get in through your back door. Do you know why? Because you didn't know it was there. You already knew everything. See how that works? Satan attacks your areas of presumed strength, not your actual strength. Let's say, for instance, me and Gracie have an open text policy where every single time at the end of the day, we don't do this, but I guess we could. Every single time at the end of the day, we read through each other's texts to see everything that happened, and then we go and get to the cell phone company and have them print out everything so we can't hide anything, and all these monitoring things, and we spy on each other, and all this. We're really going heavy-handed at this, and it's like, well, yeah, that's probably not where Satan's going to attack us in, is it? He's probably going to figure some other way, right? But if I'm kind of starting to get a little bit secretive from Gracie, I don't let her see my phone. She doesn't know my password to my phone. I've got apps on there that she doesn't know about. All these different things. Well, there's an area that Satan would probably attack in, right? He's not going to attack you in the areas that you're aware of his games on. He's going to attack you somewhere that you're not expecting it. So this is why it's important when you're going into a conversation that called, meet it with humility, not pride. Don't go in thinking you know it all. Go in thinking, teach me, God. Same thing we go to prayer with, God, teach me, I'm here to learn. Are there any questions about this? Obviously, it's a little late there, but this is the last of the long ones for the occult and the cult.